Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. I'll go put on black and
I'm going to practice. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Hey, we got a couple minutes before we're going to start. What do you guys want to do? What do you guys want me to cover?
The changes from before to now.
Changes of what? My
In the
health,
contract.
my lifestyle, my what are we
Too
checking?
much information. No, just in the contract will be fine.
My hairline.
Your waistline. No, just the contract will do just fine.
Okay. Well, real estate, nothing changes. It's always the same.
Funny.
We're going to do the listing agreement today, right?
Right.
How's everyone doing?
Awesome. Thank you.
Good.
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
Doing good. I got my vaccine and I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Any side effects?
Gain of weight,
COVID-19.
by COVID-15.
15.
I
I've
don't
been to,
I don't think weight relates to COVID vaccines.
oh, well, I need an excuse. So maybe my fat butt getting out of the chair might be the real reason.
Mhm.
I've been, my wife and I went to Las Vegas and realized that there is no pandemic, and it's a million people out there, and no one's wearing a mask because everyone's been vaccinated, and it's an honor system in Las Vegas. And I had to go see a sick uncle in New Jersey, and I was on board a plane, a 777 with 349 other people and not an empty seat. Both ways. On a Tuesday night flying and a Thursday morning returning, there wasn't an empty seat on that plane. So do I think things are quote unquote normal for a lot of people? Yeah. And real estate is the same, right? It's pretty much normal. Buyers that want to buy can, and sellers that want to sell, we're making things work. So how are you guys doing with open houses? Anyone have open houses yet?
Yep.
Tell me, good experience, bad experience? How's it working
Good.
out?
Good.
I did too. I did yours.
Okay,
And that was kind of normal. It was kind of, slow, a couple people through every hour. I did Rod's, and it was insanity. There was probably about 40 people through in 2 days. But thank God I brought a mentee with me. So
good.
we were okay.
Anybody have any issues with people refusing to sign at the front of the entrance?
I did. I had a couple, elderly couple, try to lecture me on how all the information is wrong and yada, yada, yada. And I formally told them that that is not the purpose of this paper, that I'm following the CDC and Santa Clara County rules. If you refuse to leave, then I will be forced to call the police and have you forcibly removed.
I had a real estate agent who didn't want to sign. Her husband signed, but she
That's
didn't
hard.
want to sign. Yeah.
That's crazy. What the heck?
Yeah.
So
No, at the marketing meeting this morning, Yvonne said that she set up camp with a table outside the door of the open house and didn't have any issues at all. Yvonne, are you on the call?
yes, Mike, I was just going to add, I was just thinking that it would be best to have everybody sign before they enter, because if they enter and then they don't want to sign, it'd be harder to ask them to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so, yeah,
Good.
myself and our colleagues, I suggested, hey, just get a little table outside, couple of folding chairs, whatever, and you meet them outside. The weather is gorgeous, and it's also better for us to be outside versus inside the house.
Yeah, guys, don't take it upon yourself to play police officer. This is a county mandate. Everyone needs to wear masks and everyone needs to sign. And if someone doesn't want to sign, then this is a privilege for them to get into someone's house. So just explain to them that I'm sorry, these are the rules that I have to work under, and I'm sorry that it's not going to work out, and be done with it. Yeah, it's not a political statement that you're making. It's not anything like that. Just like the Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz, you're spared this. Santa Clara County puts the burden on businesses to make sure all their employees, and in real estate offices, agents are considered employees, that we have to have on file an affidavit of our employees as to the status of their vaccine.
Right.
And it's a $5,000 fine by Santa Clara County on each offense per day. So nothing that I'm asking you guys that work in Gateway and Silicon Valley to do, other than it's a requirement put on by the county. So for some of the people that were concerned that I'm going to use this and sell the information out to whatever for this information, that's not the case. We just need to the county put the burden on business owners and companies to I guess some sort of keeping track. And we have it in our file. We do not give it to the county, and I guess we just keep it until we're audited. So anyway, I wanted to get over that. Okay, today we're going to spend a little bit of time on talking about the contracts related to, or addendums related to the listing agreement. Is there any specifics that you guys want to cover before we roll up our sleeves and get into it?
Mike, I've got a question for you, and I don't know if it's best to do it here or later, but I am going to be meeting a lady tonight that says I am not going to pay the buyer's agent. Their agent's going to have to do it. So I'm going to meet with her. I've also got a client that wants to buy in that neighborhood. We're going to both go over there and talk with her. I've already told her, look, if you don't want to pay a buyer's agent, I can't do your listing for you.
Well,
But if I can bring in the client, I can do both of you right then.
yeah. All right, well, let's cover that. That's a handling of objections that if we have time at the end, I'm sure we have 30 people on the call. We'll probably have 30 different suggestions on what to do. So actually, I take that back. We have 30 people on the call. We'll probably have 40 suggestions on what you could do, Charles. So
Awesome. That's what
I'm
I need.
I'm gonna share the screen and we're gonna talk. Do you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So before we get into the paperwork for a listing agreement, the big change that we've had in the past couple of weeks is the ability to have open houses. So this form, which is the LOH form, is only to be used if you have an existing listing. And this paperwork allows, it's seller authorizing you to have open houses and use this LOH form for only your existing listings. If you take a new listing, you need this form. So I just want to make it clear, but I want to go over this so that if you do have a listing and you haven't done this yet and you want to have an open house, you need this agreement signed by the seller allowing you to conduct open houses, okay? So basically, here's the listing agreement, open house addendum, and it talks about and it's part of the listing agreement. You fill out before the top of paragraph 1, and right away in paragraph 1 it says the default is that the seller agrees to the broker to hold an open house, and then all the rest of this stuff talks about how we conduct our open houses, how we're going to be needing a sign-in sheet or a PED, everything that we've talked about in the past couple of weeks on how to conduct open houses is this. And number 2 talks about the what we should be using, the face coverings, social distancing, open up the windows. We need to clean at least once a day, and along those lines. But we covered this when we talked about the open house, and then everything else is kind of a CYA. The attached when you print this out will be the entry advisory, and the best practices will be attached to this. So that's what we would need for an existing listing to get us to the open house level. So you got this page, you get this printed out page, which is the PED all. Now this has been changed from what we used to have, which was the PED visitor and the PED seller. So now it's just one PED. You sign it once for your buyer or your seller, and for a buyer, you sign it once and you use the same PED for all the properties that you're using. If you notice here, there isn't anything regarding an address. So they made it a simple form. It's the PED all that it's called, and this will be used both for your seller on a listing as well as your buyer in looking at properties. Okay, so that's another change. Any questions on this? You guys are using this Pete all now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
At the open house. Yeah.
Well, you could use that at the open house, but you could also do the sign-in page.
Right.
And the sign-in page is I think a little bit easier, but either one works. Whatever pleases you, Meg, tickles me.
No,
My
no,
question-
I just happened to accidentally print a bunch of those.
Okay, all right. And then here's the best practices.
Hey, my
with-
question, my Yaj question.
Yeah,
Um, can somebody still mandate to send the other feed
Yeah.
lead?
well, I mean, are you saying that they're requiring you to use the old PED?
Yes.
You know, let me ask you a question. I think if you go on well, I'm not sure. If you go on the car.org, can you still print out the old PED?
We can pull it up in zip forms. I don't know about car.
Okay, you can still pull it up?
Yes.
I, I don't know the reason. Do you know what the reason is that the listing agent is asking you to?
I
to
didn't
use-
ask for a reason, okay, fine, you want PDB, I'll send you PDB. That's all I said.
Yeah, you know, Yaj, I would say that there's ways to skin the cat, and a million different ways, and I probably would, not at this stage, not fight someone.
Yeah, that's what we did. Well, that's what you
Yeah.
want. That's what you want. So we moved on.
I don't know the logic behind it.
Right.
But from a legal point of view, this PED all works. From a
Yeah.
maybe from a relationship building, trying to make a deal together. Maybe you don't
Yeah.
you don't just keep bumping your head up against the wall.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So let's get back at it. Let's forget about that's for existing listings. This is now the new paperwork to get a listing and the new forms that are associated with it. And a lot of them are not new forms. They are the same forms that you see when you print up a purchase contract. And the first one that will look familiar will be the real estate agency relationship. And it's the same form that is both for a listing agreement as well as for a purchase agreement. And basically it talks about the agency and what the seller's agent's responsible for, what the buyer's agent should be doing, and an agent representing both seller and buyer. The key word is agent, and the agent in this case for legal purposes is the real estate company. So an agent representing both the seller and the buyer is considered the same company. Two different agents in the same office could be considered an agent representing both buyer and seller. Bottom line is the way you should be treating your clients is really in a fiduciary manner. Make believe you are the client. What would you be doing? And would you be urging your client to do the same thing? Is that what you would be doing if you were the principal on this? That's my litmus test to see how I would represent my clients and how I should coach them, and what to do is I wouldn't make them do something that I wouldn't want to do myself. But anyway, this is a required form. And this will be confirmed again on the purchase agreement. So no matter what, it's being signed at the listing, and at the purchase agreement, there'll be paragraph 2, which is confirmation of agency, which will have the same thing between who's representing who, and it's detailed who represents the seller. In this case, it's our listing. We would represent the seller, and who is representing the buyer. Any questions on that? Now, this page 2 of the agency is all the civil code sections, and it talks about everything in the civil code that is made up in this agency is detailed in the civil code, and it shows it there. Okay. Fair housing and discrimination advisory, that's becoming over the last few years, a big important thing that we're dealing with as principals as well as real estate. And basically, we can't discriminate. Even if we're not trying to discriminate, sometimes sellers do things that open up the open up interpretation that maybe their actions are discriminatory, even though they weren't trying to be any discrimination. And it deals with some of the different things in here. The first thing, paragraph 4, are these are the protected classes and characteristics. Take a look at them, and there's just different types of discriminatory classes and characteristics. Some may not be considered that you, after reading this, there may be some things in here that you never thought would be a potential discriminatory practice against these groups. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that besides us as realtors, we signed up in our code of ethics that we would abide and prohibit discrimination in rendering real estate services. So it's in our bylaws. Plus, it's also against the law. But anyway, here's some of the people that sometimes get involved in discrimination suits, and you can see it: sellers, landlords, real estate brokerage firms, real estate licensees, mobile home parks, HOAs. Okay. And here are some of the things. 8A is a prime example, which may not be motivated by discriminatory intent, but could have a discriminatory effect. Those love letters that we talked about, right? They weren't, they're not motivated by those love letters from the seller looking at that, trying to be discriminatory, but it could have an effect. Did someone pick a single couple, a single person over a married family? Did someone pick a married family over a single person? Did someone pick a male over a female? Race, you name it, and it one could argue that letter could have a discriminatory effect on that. Sometimes we, out of our goodwill, look at paragraph B. Sometimes we may be renting out an apartment and you're 90 years old, you can't go up and down the stairs, I'm going to rent it to someone else. Well, that's discrimination as well. So be careful in your advice to your clients, and be careful for yourself on how you do it. The other thing is that steering or regarding showing buyers certain neighborhoods. There was a big thing that happened in Long Island that we're still reeling over the effects of it from an NAR perspective, and people are going to be treated, and there's lawsuits going on right now, and there's criminal investigations. I'm not sure where they stand on the trials of these people, but our fellow realtors are getting nailed, and this is an investigation that's been going on for a long time. So just be aware that it could happen. Sometimes it could happen from the best of intentions, but it still happens, and you need to go over this with your seller to make sure that there's no discrimination. The only discrimination I want to see is picking the person with the most money in the suitcase. That's the only discrimination that I want to see.
Yeah.
But please, or offering more money. Don't let other things get in the way. And the one thing that can get in the way is by allowing sellers to look at those love letters. That's the first thing that really should be closed down to protect your seller. Okay.
One question regarding the money. We have to make sure that that money is legal and you know, it's is it our duty or not really? That the
Well,
money that they are offering to buy, let's say somebody comes and cash, he's getting the place for cash. Do we
Yeah,
need to
our
track the
duty-
money back or?
our duty is to make sure that that there is the money that is easily accessible and that they can, that your seller's protected, that it's not some ruse or anything like that. Is it our job to see if someone is what's it called? Um, Not whitewashing the money. I, I think that's beyond our scope. I think what we need.
It shouldn't really matter because it should be going to the escrow anyway, so you shouldn't even see the dollar bills.
I think the important thing for us and our fiduciary duty to our seller is to make sure that what the buyer or the buyer's agent is saying can be validated. And that the money is there and it's not make believe. I think that's the extent, whether how the money was acquired or not, I think that's beyond our normal scope.
Well, the lenders are going to normally check everything out. They're going to make requests of wanting to know where that money's at.
Yeah,
and where it's coming
unless
from.
it's all cash, Charles,
The cash, and there may not be.
and then there's no lender involved.
I actually have a buyer that said that he wants to buy a home literally with a cash in a briefcase. So I talked to a bunch of escrow companies. They said they cannot accept this. I think they could turn it into cashier check maybe, but I also want to hear your thoughts on this, how to handle those type of
My
cases.
thoughts on it is that you want to get an escrow officer turning white and pale is go in with a suitcase full of money. They won't accept it. So
I understand it. Just what I need to do to get this buyer properly legalize as cash, whatever, right? Would cashier check be okay if they just go to the bank with a suitcase, deposit money and just get a cashier check?
that's between your client and the bank.
Gotcha.
Cashier's check, the title companies will take that.
Get that money laundered.
Whichever way it works, that's fine. Beyond our scope, I would say, on something like that. All right, let's talk about this one. This form is also included in the not just the listing, but also in the purchase contract. And this is a possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. Again, we're talking about the agent being the company. So there was, and I go over this when we do the purchase agreement, and basically back in 2000, there was a lawsuit from in Palo Alto from an owner of a property that bought a property a couple years before and was competing with other buyers and had to pay basically $400,000 more in a bidding war to outbid another buyer. Both buyers were represented by one company, two different agents. And this one company was Cole Banker that was in two different cities. So the lawsuit was because Cole Banker or Mr. Real Estate Company, you took a duty on to me that you were going to represent me by agency in a fiduciary manner. You actually cost me $400,000 more in order to get the house. So that was the lawsuit. And the premise of the lawsuit was that a company can only represent one buyer and one seller at a time. Now, we kind of laughed at that. And I was a manager of Cole Banker during that process. And basically, I would laugh at it today and I would say, well, each office of 100 agents, um, you're saying we can only represent one buyer and one seller at a time. So we get 4 or 5 transactions a month. And anyway, so that's what was the premise of the lawsuit. Um, Everyone laughed except the judge when we went through the process, and the judge made some pre-trial rulings in favor of the plaintiff. So Cole Banker and NAR and the real estate industry got together and decided the best thing is to settle this case, and so it doesn't become a potential of having one buyer and one seller at one time. So they won $400,000. Cole Banker paid off and settled the suit. So what this is saying is that we may work with more than one buyer and one seller at a time. Now, it's important to understand that we may work with one buyer and one seller at a time. You as an individual agent could work with multiple buyers, but not on the same property. So because you have fiduciary duty, you can only represent one buyer on the property at the same time. This is an agreement that we could work with more listings and multiple buyers, but not on the same property as an individual agent. The company can represent multiple buyers on the same property, but not the individual agent. I want to make sure that is clear. So this gives us a license to represent as a company multiple buyers on a property. Only one agent and one buyer can work on it. This comes into play when you as a listing agent, you have a couple, you hold open houses again, and you get 3 buyers that say, I want to write up an offer through you. You can't do it. You could write up one, but you have to refuse the other 2. And the simple thing that is just refer it out to another agent. Okay, any questions on this?
Yeah, how is that different than having the same agent being representing the seller and the buyer, which is allowed?
Yes,
Then fiduciary is going to be ripped apart, kind of.
Well, the seller and the buyer, one agent can represent both the seller and the buyer. That same scenario, if there's 2 buyers,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's my question. How come it works on one way and not the other?
Well,
it both is very difficult to keep fiduciary relationship when you are handling both. Like personally, I think we shouldn't do either.
And you might be right. The laws might take us away from the dual agency. But as of right now, I'm going to tell you myself, I don't do dual agency much, but I guarantee you, if I'm representing a buyer and the seller, if I have a problem as a listing agent and I need to get a hold of the buyer's agent, how difficult is it?
Not difficult at all.
Not difficult at all. Can I have an argument with the buyer's agent and come to a remedy?
If you're standing in front of a mirror.
There you go. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, some people are saying that you shouldn't work with a buyer and the seller, and I respect that opinion. I'm just saying that there's no way in hell that it could work of one agent representing 2 buyers.
Yeah.
So, and that's what this is. That's what we're talking about here. This paper says that there could be dual agency. That's not the issue. The issue is an agent representing 3 buyers for the same property. You can't, in a fiduciary matter, represent 3 different buyers for only one property.
Yeah.
You can represent a buyer in a fiduciary manner and also represent the seller in a fiduciary manner, in my opinion. And actually, that's where the courts say you can do that too.
Mhm.
Mike, what if your offer has been turned down by the seller with one client? Can you bring another one back in then?
Yeah, because you're only representing one client,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Oh
can.
no, I'm saying that the seller has turned away one offer and says we're not going to accept that. Can you bring in another client then?
Yeah, what I would do, Charles, I would close the loop on buyer number one. I would relay that to buyer number one and say, would you want to come in with a higher price since the seller rejected it? And I would try to ride that buyer number one to the finish line until things died.
Okay. Yeah, obviously that makes sense.
Yep. Okay, any questions on this? So I want to make sure, and I don't want to beat, well, too late, I already beat it to death, that it's totally okay for multiple agents to work on a house with their clients. What is not okay is that one individual agent working more than one buyer on that same house. I've had this argument with a past SCORE president, so I could see how people think that this is a license to be able to work with multiple people, and that can't be further from the truth. Okay?
Mike, I have one more quick follow-up.
Yep.
What if we're the listing side and there's an agent that sends us 2 offers?
Oh, I mean, with 2 different buyers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
What do we do?
well, obviously one offer is going to be better than the other, I would think, right?
Usually, yes.
Yeah, I guess they could be the same. It's not, you're still representing your client in a fiduciary manner. So, I've never had that happen. Have anyone had that happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, I
Wow.
didn't think of it, but one was way better than the other. And she said she's going to send in another offer from another buyer. I said, okay.
Yeah. I think our duty to our client is to get them the best transaction possible. So I wouldn't dismiss both offers. I would work with the better one, and if both are the same, then at the very worst, well, I guess you could, like any other offer, reject, counter, and in this case, multiple counter, or accept one of the offers.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about this. This is also in the contract of a purchase agreement. There's still wire fraud that is still going on. You guys know that?
Yes.
It is important that we sit down with our clients, both buyers and sellers, when we're taking a listing with a seller, and talk about this and make sure that they do not do things by email when it comes to transferring money, and have them go over this with them, make sure they read this, and make sure they don't do this. Okay? There's a lot of people making a lot of money to this day on wire fraud. So buyers and sellers need to have a sit down with you as your professional real estate agent to make sure that they don't do any electronic funds transfer per just emails. Okay? Pick up the phone, Mr. Seller. Pick up the phone, Mr. Buyer, and talk to the escrow officer. Okay? I mean, to this date, I would say that we've had, that I know firsthand, about $750,000 that our clients have lost due to wiring. And I could be way off on that. Okay,
Wow, Mike, that's surprising.
That's sad.
you know what? What's probably surprising is that the number's probably a lot higher than what I really know.
We need
But
to
Mike,
keep-
everybody gets those disclosures, right, about dealing with the title company appropriately for funds transferred and received?
Yes, but are they read? As agents, do we make sure we will go over this with them? Not only that, I can tell you one instance where the buyer signed off at the title company, got the wiring instructions in their hand. On the way home, driving on the way home, they got a fake email saying a change of plans, send it here. What
Terrible.
does he do? Sends it
Oh,
with the new plans. Didn't even look at the paper, just went by the email.
That's terrible.
That was $400,000. Luckily, the FBI was able to retain 200 of it. Okay, let's move on. Here's the residential listing agreement, RLA. Just like the purchase agreement, date prepared. That's just a date of when the paperwork was written. Has nothing to do with the listing terms. Okay, so paragraph 1, first line has the seller's name. Now, what if there's, if you use zip forms, it has room for 2 sellers. What if you have more than 2 sellers? What do you use?
addendum.
What kind of addendum? You
Additional,
use a regular addendum,
no,
but there's
Additional
also a form
signature.
for additional signature addendum. And that's for both buyers and sellers. So it allows more than 2 people. So you could use that, but you put the
Mike, the
sellers,
comma doesn't work.
I'm sorry?
The comma doesn't work.
Well, you're all, well, I guess you could put in the second, the line for the second buyer, the second seller, you could put in another name next to that, but ideally it's designed for 2 people. I've seen agents put 3 people in a, in this first line using zip forms, and that's basically just put a couple names together.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, but the true way it was designed is anything more than 2 people can fit on the ASA addendum. Okay, employees and grants, this is where your company goes. And then the date, when it starts and when it finishes. It's one of 3 things required in a listing agreement to be valid. You need a start and an ending date. Next thing is a street address. Street address, city, county, zip code, and then if you know the APN number would go there. In addition to the residential listing agreement for houses or townhouses, there is a box for if it is a manufactured home, and you would check the box for a manufactured home. And then if you do that, then there'll be a listing addendum for a manufactured home. Automatically be printed out once you check the box. If you're doing a probate or some sort of guardianship or receivership, you would check the box and there'll be a addendum for a probate listing addendum. Okay, so this residential listing agreement could be used for more than just condos, townhouses, and single-family residence. It can be used for probates, mobile homes. But check the box so that you can get the addendum to go with it. Paragraph 2, listing price. Second thing that needs to be included in a listing agreement to be a valid listing. You put your price in here. And then the listing terms. putting into A next to the $ TBA to be, or TBD to be determined isn't a valid listing agreement. You guys
No.
hear that? It doesn't work to be it's not a valid listing, not enforceable.
Mm.
You need to have a dollar amount there. Okay?
Yep.
Occasionally, I get and when I review, there'll be a TBD in there. And it's not a valid agreement, so you need to get an agreement on the price. Now, you could have an agreement to the agreement and say, here's the listing, it's gonna be $1 million, but prior, 7 days prior to putting it on the MLS, we will review the listing, we will review the marketing price. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with just to be determined. Any questions on paragraph 2?
So if the price ends up being not the $1 million, something else, we just adjust that and we do a new contract with the right amount?
No, any changes to a listing agreement, you would want to use the modification of terms to the agreement. I
Mhm.
forget what I'm not sure if it's even called modification of agreement, MOA. I don't remember what it is, but it's modification. It's a modification.
Mike,
Yep.
is it okay in that, I think that there is a section for additional terms or something like that. Is it okay to say the final listing price to be determined by the seller?
Well, he's determining that anyway by signing the agreement. I guess the final listing price prior to going on the market shall be determined by the seller. I'm okay with that.
Or approved by, or, changed,
Yeah.
can be changed by.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it takes to get a valid listing agreement, not putting to be determined, you got to put a price in there. And if the seller feels comfortable to reassess the price and you're putting it in the listing agreement to get the comfort level that we will reassess this prior to putting it on the MLS, I'm okay with.
Right, okay.
Okay? All right. Paragraph 3, compensation of broker.
Mike, I have a
Well,
question.
first of all, we know that in bold it says it's not fixed by law. It's not a 6% across the board, and they are negotiable. But with that being said, I skipped to paragraph 3A right away, and this is where the checkbox on 3A, blank percent. This is the total commission. This is the commission that the seller is going to pay us. And we wind up paying the buyer's agent. So in here, I don't want to see 3%, and then you're going to be paying the buyer's agent 3%, because that's not what this contract says. It says total commission, and it should be the 5 or the 6%. That's what goes in paragraph 3A. Okay. Occasionally I see that I'll see a 5%, and then I'll see below that seller to pay for, actually I see it more in paragraph C, but I'll wait for that, okay? All right, so it's the total of 5-6%, whatever goes in there. Can you have a flat price? I guess you can. I don't see that very often, but this is what the seller's paying the total commission. That's where it goes there.
Mike,
Yeah.
Art has his hand up.
All right, if you could help me, because I can't see.
I'll help you.
All right, perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Renee.
All
You're
right.
very welcome, Art.
I wanted Mike to finish his whatever I didn't want to interrupt, but so Mike, I see we have the exclusive agency agreement. I mean, sorry, the exclusive authorization and the the right to sell listing.
Yep.
But what if a homeowner says that how about you do an open listing or you do a net listing? Then is there a different form for that?
Yeah, well,
or
open listings, there is a separate form for that.
Okay.
We don't like open listings because it's basically an open listing is just saying, hey, I'll pay you commission if you sell the property. You can't put it on the MLS. You can't cooperate with other agents, but there may be a time and place for I don't know about an open listing, but I would say maybe a single party compensation agreement where
Okay.
you're dealing with a for sale by owner. So yeah, there's different form. This is strictly exclusive authorization or right to sell.
Okay.
There's
And
probably 5 different residential listing agreements that are not exclusive authorization or right to sell. There's others, but today we're just going to go strictly over the
Okay.
RLA.
Okay.
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, I have 2 questions. So the first one is for 2B. Can you give an example of what a listing term could be? And the second question is for 3A. Let's say I charge 3 or 6%. Do I have to necessarily pay half to the buying agent, or I could do like 2.5?
Yeah, let's talk about the first thing. Paragraph 2B, listing terms. Maybe you agree to pay for staging. I would put it, that's a listing term. Maybe another thing is I agree to paragraph 2A to sell it for $1 million, but listing terms in 30 days, if we do not sell the property, maybe the price automatically has a reduction to $950,000. And I already have it built into the listing agreement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, now those are, I'm sure there's a million other things, but those are 2 that I was thinking about. Let's talk about 6%. Are you required to give 3% to the other agent? No. What is required in our office is to give 2.5. So if you get, and I'll move ahead. Look at paragraph D, 3D, right here. This is the agreement of what we agree that the seller understands what we're going to compensate the other agent for. This would be your 2.5% or your 3% would go right here. We don't have a requirement that you need to equally share the compensation, but we do have a requirement that you have to pay 2.5% out.
So even if I charge 4%, I have to give 2.5?
If you're going to put on the multiple listing service, yes.
Because, for example, what I noticed is that in Salinas, a lot of agents offer 2% to the buying agent.
Yeah.
And that's kind of common down there. So
yeah, that's an issue. I guarantee, Art, when things were back in the day here, things were 3%, and when you start breaking and 2.5, everyone else eventually is going to get there. We're not there yet, and I hope, because I guarantee you guys, once you go there, it doesn't come back. And right now, all the players in the areas around the Bay Area are pretty much staying in line with a 2.5. I keep an eye out all the time on that.
yeah, I have a listing which is pending, and I offer 2.5. I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, that's our office policy. We don't want to. We don't want to. In the long haul, if we start breaking it, other people will follow, and it'll become, I think, the chasing towards the bottom is what I view that at. So right now it's 2.5, and we'll address it at some point when we have to.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's get back to paragraph 3A1. And now this is if during the listing period or any extension, when we have a ready, willing, and able buyer, we are entitled to commission. Now I want to be careful here. Just because we produce an offer and we think it's a ready, willing, and able buyer, seller is not obligated to not only accept the deal, and it's might be difficult to try to collect commission. So again, this listing agreement is the terms where someone wants to sell the property. The only thing it really covers is price. There's a lot of other terms in a purchase agreement. Could be close of escrow, could be the loan amount, could be the all cash versus loan, could be a lot of different things. Just because you get an offer doesn't mean the seller is, we have the listing for $1 million. Just because we get $1 million offer doesn't mean the seller has to take that and is obligated to pay us, because there's different terms that the seller can request. So we got to be careful on this.
I
This
have a
gives us a
concern.
little bit of power on this for negotiations with the seller. Yeah.
May I ask, let's say you have a listing for $1 million and the seller doesn't want to do anything to the house, but they want a price that is a little bit more than the house as is worth. Let's say the terms we put that we're gonna stage it, we're gonna fix the yard, we're gonna paint, we're gonna, and all comes from the agent's pocket to prepare the house for sale. And then you get the price that is listed on the agreement, let's say the $1 million. Can the seller then say, oh no, I changed my mind, I don't want $1 million, I want 1.2, let's say, even though the agent have spent all that money fixing and making that property ready to sell?
Yeah. So you said early in the conversation that the seller lists for $1 million but wants more. Did they tell you this?
No, but they give you previous examples that they have listed with other agents, and they got top price, let's say.
So they are telling you, but they're not telling you directly.
Yeah.
What I would do to protect myself on a listing on that is, if I lay out money, then if the seller decides not to sell, I want to get reimbursed.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I think that's the easiest way to do it. Yeah, can the seller change their mind? It's frustrating, but yeah, and then we have to decide whether we want to sue the seller for commission. And it's not that easy it's not that easy to go through a lawsuit and collect money. We sometimes are throwing good money into bad. But that's something that we could at least talk about.
So what is the best way to document that the costs are to be reimbursed if the property doesn't sell?
There's your paragraph 2B right there. And you could also add it to any listing addendum, or you can add it to paragraph 19.
Mike, could you actually put there that, agent will pay for upgrade should seller not sell through agent, seller to reimburse agent for money, for outlays, for whatever?
It could be anything, Renee. It could be for reimbursed for marketing. It could be reimbursed, whatever you want to put in there, as long as the seller and you agree to it, that's fine.
So basically, if you're going to put any money out, then I would absolutely put in there that if they don't sell through you, or there's no close of escrow, they don't sell the property through you, that you get reimbursed.
reimbursed on whatever you want to put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's keep on going. Paragraph B, paragraph A2. This is a clause that says, okay, say the contract's canceled. And what if we had buyers that were interested in the property or looked at the property, or our listing's expiring and we have some active interest in the property? What can we do? By putting in a date in here, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever you want to put in there, this is saying that after the property is either canceled, the listing agreement's canceled, or listing agreement expires, that if the seller sells the property to these people, we get the compensation.
Mhm.
And now the people, the one thing that needs to happen is that you need to provide a letter to the seller with the names of such prospective buyers. So read that paragraph 2. Don't, when you fill out a listing, don't ignore it, because it could come into play. Maybe it's 30 days. Maybe it's to protect us from an unscrupulous seller that finds out that the buyer wants to buy the property. The seller finds out about it, tells you that we decided to cancel the listing. We don't want to sell it anymore. So you cancel the listing. The next day, the buyer buys the property. This protects us.
Mm.
We've had a situation in the Silicon Valley office on a $4 million property. And we sued for commission. So don't leave it blank. If it's 0 days, you're not protected.
I have a relevant question. Is there anything special that needs to be done if the listing expires while property is in contract?
If you're in contract with your listing, you're in contract, there's nothing that needs to be done, except I would extend the listing for at least through the escrow date. You don't need to do anything, except the only bad part about it is if the contract cancels, your listing has expired. So I would try to extend the listing just in case during the escrow period, you get a backup offer. If you don't extend, your listing agreement is once the contract has canceled, your listing is expired and you are not part of the listing anymore. So that's why I like to get an extension on the listing, so that I have a little bit more protection in case this contract doesn't go through.
Mike, I have a question.
Yep.
Just to make a 3A2 clear. So if I'm in contract with a seller for 6 months,
Yep.
the second month he decides to withdraw or cancel the process, we still have a couple of months left. If I don't put anything on this
Wait,
section,
hold on a second. You have a 6-month listing. He wants to stop the process. Now the question is, does he want to cancel the listing, or he just doesn't want to sell anymore?
isn't it the same thing?
Nope. He doesn't want to sell anymore, but you have a valid contract. It's up to us whether we want to cancel the listing or not.
Okay.
Now, there's other ways. If someone wants to, I decided I don't want to sell it anymore. Okay, we could do withdrawal from the MLS. We still have a valid listing agreement. And so if he sells the property to someone else, you are entitled to the commission during the term of the listing.
Even if I don't put anything on this section right here?
You have a valid listing. You said for 6 months.
Correct.
After month 2, he says, I don't want to sell anymore. We still have a valid listing agreement, but we may want to just take it off the MLS because he doesn't want to sell anymore. We still have a valid listing.
Okay.
Once we cancel the listing, then we don't have a valid listing. We can leave the listing alone and just do withdrawal from the MLS.
In
You
that
understand what
case,
I'm saying?
in
Yeah.
that case, if the house gets sold within the 6 months, even though it wasn't on the MLS, the agent gets his commission.
Well, we would probably have to fight for it, but we have the legal grounds to fight for the commission.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Remember, a seller enters into a contractual agreement to pay you commission based on you doing the job. If he decides he doesn't want to sell, he still is obligated to pay commission during the length of this contract. That's why when a seller says, I don't want to sell anymore, we could see what's the reason. Does he want to cancel the agreement because he doesn't like you anymore? Or does he sincerely doesn't want to sell? And the way to figure that out is you withdraw the listing from the MLS. The contract that's written is still valid. If he comes back and says, I want to cancel the agreement, then you know the real reason why he doesn't want to sell. It's not that he doesn't want to sell, probably he doesn't want to sell with you. That's how you find out.
Okay. And then on
Okay?
the MLS, it wouldn't say withdraw, it'll say cancel.
Well, regarding the MLS, yeah, it would not be canceled. It would be withdrawal of the MLS.
Okay. Thank you.
Once you cancel, that means that there's no contractual agreement between you and the seller.
Okay, so
And if you have a valid listing, that's not the case.
my question on that actually, if there is a withdrawal and legally the other agent can still get his compensation from the sale within the time period that the listing is contracted for. If the seller gets another agent, then the new agent does not get anything, or he gets also as much as the first one who was withdrawn?
Well, first of all, if he gets another agent, the agent will not be able to put on the MLS because it is a withdrawal, it's not a cancellation. That'll be the first hint. If the seller's lying to agent number 2, he'll realize that there's still a valid contract. So, and the agent number 2 is not within the code of ethics because he's interfering with agency, because there's still a valid listing between the seller and agent number 1.
Okay,
Now,
so
I'm only
this is-
talking about withdrawal from the MLS. I'm not talking about cancellation. Cancellation means that you tore up this agreement and the seller is able to go do whatever he wants. I was only talking about the withdrawal of the MLS. Where
Okay,
we still have this listing, it's still a valid listing, and both buyer and seller have not canceled both seller and listing agent have not canceled the listing agreement.
Well, my question is based on I am with Land Voice, and they give us numbers and leads that they are withdrawals. Then those leads are not good. They are not,
Are
shouldn't
they
even-
withdrawals? Just find out what the definition is. Is it a withdrawal or is it a cancellation of contract?
Okay, no, they have two. They have cancellations and they have withdrawals and they have FISBOs. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming withdrawals are withdrawal from MLS. That's not.
I don't know. You would need to check with them.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if it is a withdrawal, that's depending on what their definition is, it appears to me that when someone says withdrawal, that is not a cancellation of the listing agreement, and that there still is a valid listing agreement with another agent and the seller.
Okay.
Mike, even if it's a withdrawal though, it's still gonna show up on the MLS, but it'll show up with a W.
It
So
should, yeah.
Okay, so I think sometimes when you say withdrawal from the MLS, people think it doesn't show up on the
Yeah,
MLS.
we're not gonna
No,
see
no,
it.
what will show up is that when you're looking as an active listing, it's not gonna appear anymore.
Right, but if you looked up that address, it'll show as a withdrawal and you look
Yep.
at and then it'll go as an expired when it expired.
Yeah, you'll see the history of the property.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
you.
I forgot where I am. I think am I in B?
Sure. I have one more question. This is Viviana.
Yeah.
I have a leasing agreement with the client. We were waiting for them to finish fixing the house. They finished fixing the house. Now, because we didn't find a replacement property they like for the price they wanted, I have a listing agreement for 1 whole year. They said, we are not going to sell yet. We are going to wait. I didn't cancel the agreement. They didn't ask me to cancel the agreement.
Yep.
It's valid. I'm fine, right? I have it. You can put it in
Yeah.
MLS. Nothing happened.
You
Okay.
you have a valid listing agreement.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
But you're not gonna, if they don't want to sell right now, there's no sense in putting on the MLS.
Correct.
So you just keep it off the MLS, but you have a valid listing agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And make sure that you get an extension for exclusion for the MLS.
Yes, I have 90 days.
Okay, all right, let's move on.
Thank you.
Let me see where I'm at. B, I think. So, so this talks about getting paid if another party is not the seller but is stopping the sale from happening. Basically, then we have a potential for recovery of the compensation, and then we'd have to see what who is stopping the suit. So basically, this contract's trying to protect the listing agent or the seller's agent from all the stoppage of the ability to sell. We'd have to look at a case by case on that, but we have paperwork that tells us that we're entitled to commission if we have a ready, willing, and able buyer and the seller and something doesn't happen. We just have to, it's a case by case basis on that. Paragraph C, in addition, seller agrees to pay broker. This is where I see some problems here. I see sometimes that the $450 or $500 transaction coordination fee, that's illegal. We cannot have that as a part of a listing. The courts have ruled that that's part of our job, and we can have the seller pay for that, but it has to be lumped together with the commission up here. So it can't be something separate that is part of our normal course of doing business. So if you wanted to have the seller pay for a $500 transaction fee, then add the $500 to the commission, and don't put 5% plus $500. Put in 5.02%. That's what our attorneys advise.
Mm.
Okay, so we cannot collect money based on our normal way of doing business. That's where the commission comes into play. Everyone understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both the buyers and sellers. I see sometimes where it'll be in the purchase agreement where the buyer's paying for that on our listing, and really the agent is doing something that is there's court precedent of finding the agent of the company for doing that. Okay. Okay, paragraph D, this is where we put in our, check the box and put in the compensation to the buyer's agent. So our policy for each office is 2.5% if it's on the MLS to the buyer's agent. If it's a lot, if it's a real high-end property, then we could talk about it. But I just dealt with this on a $5 million listing, and out of the 88 properties, 85 were 2.5%. So believe me when I tell you, that's something that I'm always looking at. So if you have a big priced home, and you want to talk to me about the waiver of the 2.5 to something else, please, two things: call me, and then be prepared to justify it. Okay. Okay. This also talks about that the seller puts the money in escrow and pays us. We pay the buyer's agent. Paragraph F, this refers to that paragraph 3A2, and this is saying, hey, seller represents that he has not entered into a previous listing agreement with another broker. So we need to know that. And any obligation from that other broker regarding that letter that has potential buyers to get compensated. Because if there is a letter, they need to put it in here as to who it is, so we know whether we are getting paid on if there's a transfer ownership or not getting paid. And we're taking the listing with the letter and with the exclusions to us getting paid. And it should be on paragraph F2. Okay? And if anyone is in this F2 is in here, and that person wants to buy the property, we're not obligated to, we're not going to get commission, but we're not obligated to represent the seller on this deal. Okay? That's why as a listing agent going in, that's why paragraph 2 is important to protect agent number 1. And we need to make sure as agent number 2 coming in that F1 and F2 are detailed if there is such a exclusion. I could tell you many agents, buyers, sellers, agents number 1 don't even write that letter of who is a prior interest in the property. So if the lesson to be learned as a agent with a listing that expires, make sure that you go through, especially how easy it is with PEDS, you have identified who the potential buyers are for the property. So anyway, I urge you to utilize that paragraph A2 if you have a listing that, we don't have many listings that expire, but more so cancellation. We see more cancellations than we do see expired listings.
Mike, what's the way that someone can, the question I always get asked is how can you find out that it was sold to someone that you had been the procuring cause?
Well, usually you find out after the fact.
Okay, can you go after them after the fact?
Well, I guess the scenario depends on how it happened. You know, I mean, this case I told you earlier, a $4 million sale, we got lucky. The buyer's agent, we just put 2 and 2 together regarding the buyer was represented by an agent. Our agent represented the seller. Our agent was talking to buyer agent on that deal on a separate deal and talked about it, saying that, hey, my buyer I lost that buyer. All of a sudden he went dormant on me. It turns out that the seller and buyer were in cahoots. So it took the testimony of the agent to help us put our case together. So really, Renee, it kind of, am I going to say that things happen without us knowing about it? Yeah. How do we find out? A lot of times we find out by chance, or I guess if you think that there's something going on, then you do the research as to who wound up buying the property and when it happened. And if you show proof, yeah, it might be grounds, but at least it's worth taking a look at. Paragraph 4A. Here's where other fixtures are included and excluded. It's good to have it down with your seller to make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks when the purchase agreement takes place. Got to deal with leased or not owned properties, items, and then also liened items, especially if there's like a PACE loan or something like that. It's good to go over this before you get the preliminary title report. Paragraph 5 deals with everything in here, deals with how important it is for sellers to utilize the MLS, and that the case study is that if you don't use the MLS, you're probably maybe risking full return on the seller's money of getting it. So there's also a box here that needs the seller's initials and your initials. The agent's initials can go in here, just going over that the MLS is an important aspect of the sale of the property. I skipped C up here. It talks about that the brokers are participant of, and we're a participant of MLS listings. If you're selling real estate in this area, that's the primary MLS. If you're selling property that's not in our area, say the Central Valley, it's a different MLS than MLS listings. And you would check the box that it's not our primary MLS. Now we data share with all the MLSs, but it's important to put down that we're a member of MLS listings. Some of you guys may be members of other MLSs like Bay East or Metro List or other items like that. But for the most part of you guys are MLS listings, which is the primary MLS in our areas here. Okay. Clear cooperation. Now that's been beat over the coals the last couple of years, where we cannot advertise property and not have it on the MLS. So if we're gonna make it public marketing, it needs to be on the MLS within 1 day. Now MLS could be do not show, not on the it's active but do not show, or it's coming soon, okay to show, but not an active listing like a regular listing that is most of our listings that we have. Failure to not have it on the MLS, whether it be coming soon or actually they don't call it coming soon anymore, but I call it that. So either it's fully active or it's one of those coming soon categories. Failure to not have it on that, but have it in a public marketing, whether it be in paragraph B, whether it be on a website, whether it be just a sign on the property, that's public marketing. And the fines can be pretty astronomical. It starts out low, but repeat offenders can get fined, I think, up to $15,000 for an offense. It won't be your first offense. I think we've had a couple second offense, and I think it's been $1,000, which is still a lot of money. But anyway, so the listing agreement asks whether this property falls under the rules of clear cooperation. So commercial real estate is not clear cooperation policy. It's just residential, and you have to abide by the clear cooperation policy.
Mike, we can mark it within our offices though, right? Within
Yes.
Keller Williams.
Yes.
Okay. Even before it goes on MLS or anything else, we can mark it
Well,
amongst.
let's when you say Keller Williams, let's do it for our 3 offices.
Right, absolutely. There is only our 3 offices. The rest
That's
don't
right.
exist, right?
Yeah, that is okay for us to do. We don't have to have it in the MLS, and we could share it within our 3 offices. And I think the easiest way to do that is our community Facebook page. I think that if anyone has any other ideas, if you want to email it to your team leader or the other team leaders of the offices to get it spread around, that's fine too. But it's clear we cannot advertise it if it's not on the MLS. We cannot advertise it to competing offices or the general public. Guys got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Paragraph D, if you're going to take a listing and you're not going to put it on the MLS, you need to have the seller exclusion to the MLS, and that's that SELM form, which says that it's excluded from the MLS. So you have permission from the seller to take a listing, but you're not going to advertise it on the MLS for a certain period of time. And that SELM differentiates between a few different choices on that. Let's see what else. So it's real important because that SELM form needs to go to the MLS. If they do a check on that, they do an audit, and they don't have a copy of the SELM form, we could be in trouble. So when you take a listing, send the SELM form to your MLS.
Hey, Mike, it's Christina.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick question. I noticed a lot of agents are just marking D and they put a date there. They still need to include the exclusion form. Is that correct?
Yeah, just because there's a date, you need to have the SELM form for the
Yeah.
MLS.
It just makes it very, it sounds like they can just put a date here and they don't have to put an exclusion form in. So, okay,
No,
noted. Thank you.
that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, and if there are some properties that the clear cooperation does not apply. I told you commercial is the big one. So on that. Paragraph 8, MLS data on the internet. We send the information out on all the internet sites. If you don't want it, you have the option of not doing that. But the default is that it's going to be on the MLS, and it's going to be on the additional internet sites. We could, guys, I mean, there's talk about, hey, Zillow is this, Zillow is that. If everyone wanted it, we don't have to send our listings to Zillow. I could just check a box and Zillow will be gone. So keep that in mind. Now, if we did that, I guarantee you within 15 minutes of a new listing, you're going to get an irate client saying, I can't find my house on Zillow. What's going on? So, but just so that you know, we have the ability to opt out of these different websites. So keep that in mind.
Mike, can we go back to that SELM form requiring to be sent to MLS? can you explicitly tell the steps? What does it mean? Send to MLS?
Sign the form, get your seller to sign the form when you take the listing, complete it, and then you send it to the MLS so they have a record of it.
You mean email to the MLS,
Yes.
info@mlslistings.com?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, just giving it to the office isn't good enough. Someone can get, I mean, an agent can get $500, even if you did the SELM form and you gave it to the office and and they didn't get it.
Okay.
It does ask for the broker signature. Is the team leader signature good enough or our
Yes.
signature good enough?
Yeah.
Mike, and that form is required 24 hours, right? Doesn't matter if it's 5 days or 1 week.
Yeah, it needs to be signed if you're not putting it on the MLS within a day.
Okay.
Okay. Now, totally different than the clear cooperation. This is just an exclusion to the MLS. Two different policies. Okay. Okay. Let's see what else. Paragraph 8. I think I'm still going on with that. There are opt-outs, as I told you about, that you could do when you put a listing in that you don't want the full address being advertised. You don't want the on the websites. You have the ability to opt out, so you should go over that with your client. Most of the sellers want full exposure, but you should, when you do the listing, go over the options that are available to them. And there's ability to in paragraph 2 to opt out of certain internet sites which have automated estimates. Zillow is one. I'm trying to think of automated estimates. Even in the listing,
Realtor.
Realtor.com. I don't know about that, but there are, and there's ability to opt out of a bunch of different social media. Seller representations saying that that when we're taking this listing, that the seller's warning that we're not in foreclosure unless they tell us that there's no any other than the loans that they're telling us about. There's no secret loans. Basically, we want the seller to be above board when we're taking the listing, because that might dictate whether we want to take the listing or not. It may be a short sale listing, but we want the seller to tell us everything about the loans on the property, any litigation on the property, any government things going against the property, and just keep us in the loop of what's going on. And broker and seller duties, I'll let you, for the time, I'll let you read that. Basically, we got to represent the seller in a fiduciary manner. There's an option in paragraph 10 that the seller is giving us permission to order the following reports, which would be the structural pest control, property inspection, HOA documents. And I do my best to fill this out in paragraph 10D and tell them this is what we recommend that they do, and let the seller agree to that right then and there, taking the listing. Deposit, we don't do that, but the broker is authorized to accept and hold on seller's behalf any deposits which is applied towards the purchase price. That's the old days. We won't do this, but I guess in the state of California, there may be some places that still do that. We don't. We actually, when we deal with the deposits, we want the buyer to deal with the deposit directly and not get us in the way. Agency relationships, We talked about that when we did the, this box is checked, so there's attached agency relationship, which we covered. Confirmation of agency, we talked about is being done when the purchase agreement is written up. There's another agency that the confirmation is being done. And we talked about the potentially competing sellers and buyers. We covered that. Security insurance showings, audio and video. Basically, we don't want to be responsible if someone breaks into the house through the key box and stuff like that. You know what? Things happen. During open houses, things get robbed. We need to go over this with the with our seller. You know what? Things happen, we get in trouble, but at least we have the paperwork that kind of backs us up. Bottom line is, you gotta make sure that you cross all the T's, dot all the I's when you're showing property, both as a buyer's agent and a listing agent. You know, if a seller can prove, and with cameras, guys, it's easier to do, that we were negligent, I guarantee you they're coming after the agent in this regard. We could opt out to the default in here is that the property is going to have virtual tours and media, and the seller agrees that these images are going to be on all forms of advertising. There is an area here that the seller could say no to that. Does not want the his house advertised at all, or any pictures or things. But that's something that you need to go over with your client in that regard. I imagine that there's some cases where maybe it's a celebrity, maybe it's a sports celebrity, actor, whatever, where they want any pictures or anything like that. They don't even want the MLS. So that could happen as well. This also gives that the prospective buyers can also take some photographs, videos, or do a walkthrough video of their house, and that's allowed. And then we could also the seller can just allow the appraiser taking the pictures and no one else. So there's some options on a part of the seller that they can elect to do. For the most part, though, sellers want to sell, they want to get maximum exposure, and they want to get the most money. So a lot of these things generally don't apply, but you could have a specific case where things are a little bit different. The authority to have a key safe or lockbox on here. The default is that you're going to have a lockbox on there. There is, if the seller does not want it, there's a box here that can be checked. Does not authorize the broker to install a key safe or lockbox. When can that happen? That can happen with the maybe it's a tenant occupied property, and the lease calls for no lockboxes. So you got to be careful about that. No discrimination in paragraph 17. Paragraph 18, if there is a dispute between the seller and us, that the attorney's fees prevail, the loser pays the winning attorney's fees. And then paragraph 19 is just additional terms that they want to put in here. It also, you see that there's paragraph 19 that in Viviana, when the case where you took the listing, maybe the seller said, I'm going to have a contingency on a replacement property, and then you would check the box there. If there's a short sale, you would check the box. If there's a trust, you would check the box. So different things in that regard. A listing is really subject to the approval of the office. The listing belongs to the broker, but I haven't rejected any listing at all that I could ever remember. maybe you wish that I rejected it after the fact, but there's no, we just take a look at it. I want to make sure that it's a valid listing. Same thing with the purchase agreement. You have mediation and you have arbitration. I'm not going to go over that. Entire agreement is everything's got to be in writing, just like the purchase agreement. We also want the seller warning that he is the owner of the property and has the authority to sell the property. Now, there may be some documents that'll prove that, but we don't want to go through a 2-hour listing presentation and he is not the power to be in order to sell the property. In paragraph 24, you would check this box if he is a representative capacity and he is signing on behalf of the ownership, which may not be the individual, might be a trust, might be a corporation, might be something else. But there's an individual that needs to sign, just like a purchase agreement, and this is where it would be done. Other than that, this would be the signatures and a couple different addendums here. The listing agreement, the CAA, this is the Corona addendum. It's been updated this month to reflect open houses, but nothing else really has changed in that. Just an update on how to show property and how to what the COVID protocols are for showing property as of May versus last March on there. Again, if you have an existing listing, we use that LOHA. If you have a new listing, you just use the CAA addendum, which has been updated, reflective in the past 2 weeks on that. And it's a 2-page form, and don't use any forms other than zip forms. We don't want to have an old CAA in your computer bag pulling that out. We want to use the most up-to-date information, and those forms have changed as of a couple of weeks ago on there. And this is the P-all, which should be attached to the RLA CAA, and also used for buyers. And this would be also the rules for showing and cleaning the house. Normal seller's advisory, which is 2 pages, talks about some of the things that you're required to produce, all mandated disclosures. They're by law. Talks about those, talks about the TDS, talks about the death. Mostly disclosures on this 2-page and other requirements that paperwork requirements that we go through when we do a complete listing package. Considerations, the list, taking a listing, also get the inspections done, the benefit of lock boxes and for sale signs and things like that. So, last thing here is the California Consumer Privacy Act. That's also in the contract purchase agreement. And California has a law. It doesn't apply to us because we're too small of a company, but a bigger company there's consumer privacy laws that take place regarding a consumer's right to get off of any database, things like that. Again, it doesn't apply to us on that. So I went through a bunch. I'm sorry that I held you over for longer. I have any time that you guys want to talk, any questions that you have. Last couple of pages I went over, it's kind of boilerplate, but you kind of get the picture that you got to go through everything in taking a listing, explain everything's in there for a reason. Explain when you're taking a listing, some of the things that a seller has to think about and decide what they want to do. Questions?
I have a quick question. you mentioned the COVID. I had a very strange question the other day. If somebody passes away from COVID, so I know within the last 3 years, if someone passes away in the home, we what do you call it? Disclose.
Disclose.
You need to
Disclose.
disclose that someone's died in the property or at the property within the
Right.
last 3 years.
And then they asked me, oh, so it was a buyer and we were
Yep.
showing houses and they said, oh, do you think that they passed away with COVID? And I said, wow, you know what? I don't even know if that's legal. I know we can't do it for AIDS, but I don't know for COVID.
Yeah, AIDS is the only thing that you are not allowed to disclose the death of a person.
Oh, so if our buyers want to know, Mike, then we can ask the listing agent that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
Okay.
how'd the person pass away?
Okay, all right. It was just I was kind of, not used to that question.
Yeah, you don't think about it. I agree. That would take me back a step.
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
I talked to Dave Walsh and he said that the listing agents are now allowed to tell all buyers what the highest price is provided during a multiple offer presentation if they're allowed to do so.
Yeah, the reason, Lee, is there's a form in Zip Forms, and right now it's not. I can't think of what it's called, but it's a confidentiality agreement that you as a buyer's agent can write up an offer and attach a confidentiality agreement. Does not allow anyone to say anything about our offer and price. But NAR ruled this about 10 years ago and said it is okay for people to share what other offers are at. And it's not unethical to do that.
Does it have to be in writing, Mike, on a listing form, or is it just assumed?
What has to be in writing?
Well, if you're the listing agent, do you need to have a document or a signature or a line that says that the seller is authorizing the listing agent to disclose the price of other offers during a multiple offer presentation?
Lee, it's not the seller that has the concern, it's the other buyers that have the concern. So if there is a confidential agreement on one of the buyer's agents with their offer, you are not allowed to say anything about the offer. If there is no confidentiality agreement, it's carte blanche. You could say, we could have Charles writing up an offer, I'm writing an offer, and Yvonne writing up an offer to you, and you could tell the other two agents what my offer is. It's totally legal to do that. Now, if I had a confidentiality agreement attached to that,
I agree.
You would not be able to do that. But the NAR was clear in their ethics decision that it's totally legal to share other people's offers. Now, I could view that as a benefit to the seller. I could also turn that around and say it's a drawback. If you tell me Charles's offer was 1.5 million, and I'm about to write up an offer, and I was going to write up an offer at 1.6, I may now only write up an offer at 1.55. So in reality, that may have hurt your seller by by $50,000.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's no clear cut. You would think that there'd be a benefit, but maybe not. But it's clear that you are allowed to share other people's offers if there's no confidentiality agreement.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
Could we not share the offer price with other agents and just
You don't
share
have
that?
to.
Yeah, I don't have. Okay.
You don't have to. I'm just telling you that, and what I told Lee is that you have the right to do that as long as there's no confidentiality agreement. Interesting thought process on whether you do that or not. It's up to you.
I usually give them a range.
Me too.
So Mike, I do have that question about the
Sure.
seller that I'm going to meet tonight.
Okay.
She doesn't want to pay a buyer's agent's fees.
But she's okay paying you 5%?
No. She
Okay.
goes, she wants to pay 2 to 2.5%.
Yeah. And
I told her the only way that I could do it is if I brought in the buyer to do it, because I can't write up a listing agreement and not pay
yeah,
another
well,
agent.
well, it's real simple. You can't advertise and you can't put it on the MLS. And we know the benefit to the MLS is saying, you know, great, you're paying me, but do you want me just to go with my buyers? And I can't advertise it to other, I can't put it on the MLS because I'm authorizing that I have to pay out 2.5%. So we eliminated the MLS.
I explained that to her, and she said, well, there's 2 other realtors that already say they can do that. And I said, they cannot go on the MLS.
Yeah. Well,
they may be agents, but they are not realtors.
And not only that, well, no, they could be realtors, Charles. They're just gonna hold it as a pocket listing and not expose it. So you got to say, you know, if this is what you want, I'll do this, but here's where you'll make a lot more money, and it's what you net that's more important than what you get. And you know, in this day and age, especially now with the multiple offers, we want to get that type of scenario. And by only paying 2.5, how can these agents do it? Are they not getting paid, or are they gonna? They obviously ask them if they're gonna put it on the multiple listing, and the answer will be no.
Somebody had told her that, look, buyers will pay their agents.
What?
Pay their agents' fees.
Well, not on the MLS.
Not on the MLS, and that's what I explained to her. They won't be able to go on the MLS.
I really think that there's got to be some education involved in this one. And if you could back it up with facts about what prices are, and with the MLS, how you know they're 108% of the asking price versus versus if it doesn't get exposure, you're not going to net as much money. But I see that becoming a bigger problem once this ruling happens with NAR about disclosure of what buyers are going to be able to see what the buyer's agents are going to be compensated through the MLS, and we'll see. It's going to become more of an issue with buyers agents more than I think with buyers agents and buyers more than sellers and sellers agents.
Mike, if someone has signed, you know, and Charles, if someone has signed a buyer representation agreement, there is the possibility that based on that agreement, if the seller's not going to cover the cost of negotiating the contract for the buyer is responsible for paying the buyer's agent. So that's where she's getting it from.
But I'm just saying that she's being told it can go on the MLS, and I'm saying
oh yeah,
it can't.
No. Okay, just wanted to be clear about the other thing.
Absolutely. And some realtor, and it's a local realtor in Evergreen, has told her that you can do that. And I'm going, that's not right.
Well, you know those Evergreen agents.
Those buggers.
Charles, it you know, just an objection that they're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah.
You and I both, everyone on this Zoom call knows that the seller would benefit by exposure on the MLS.
Exactly. And so I just got to show her, here's what the difference is going to be. If you're exposed, you're going to get the most amount of money. And if you pay that other agent instead of trying to cut somebody out, you're going to do a lot better.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
yeah. Dimitri.
Mike, could you cover the topic of dual variable? So first of all, if you were to
Yeah.
offer this to the seller, how would you write it? How would you talk about? How would you propose it? And maybe this is one of the solutions for Charles to offer dual variable to get a listing. And on the other hand, if I'm representing a buyer, I'm looking at the MLS, I'm seeing that the listing is dual variable. Should I do something about it? Should I kind of warn my buyer about this? Should I do anything differently?
All right, so let's talk about do variable. You guys see that on the MLS every once in a while on the left side of the listing agreement on the MLS, it'll say do variable on there. And what that means is that should the listing agent represent a buyer, the commission that the seller is responsible for paying will be less than if you represent a buyer on that listing. So in other words, I have a listing and I agree with the seller. I agree to list the property for 6%. But if myself, not the company, but myself, if I bring in a buyer, Mr. Seller, you don't have to pay 6%, you could pay 5%. And that's a savings of 1% to utilize my buyer. My buyer will get a 1% gain, not the buyer, but the seller will get a 1% gain for making a deal with my buyer versus you guys having a buyer. So that's called variable rate commission. Okay? Variable rate commission needs to be disclosed on a part of the listing agent if that's about to take place, or that's an option. The requirement of the listing agent, if they have an offer that they're writing for themselves, they need to disclose it to all the other agents writing up an offer to say, hey guys, just want to let you know that if I'm writing up an offer, if the seller accepts my offer, he's getting a 1% benefit. So it puts all the other agents on notice what they have to do, even if it's the same offering price, they're behind the 8 ball by 1%. So it's our obligation and it's a requirement that we disclose that to all the other agents.
I have a follow-on question. On MLS, I never see the actual discount of the dual variable.
No. It doesn't say that. All it'll say will be variable commission. And you should ask when you are making an offer, number one is, are you writing up an offer personally, Mr. Listing Agent? And number two, if you are, I see dual agents, I see variable rate commission. What is the amount that the seller will benefit by taking your deal? That listing agent's required to tell you what that is.
Gotcha. I was about to ask if they're required. And what if
They are required. It's MLS rules.
So if they refuse, I can just point them to MLS rules or ask
Yeah,
MLS.
just say, hey, that's the rules. And then figure that there's gonna be a discount. And then I would after the deal, if you don't get the deal, then I would turn them in. I wouldn't turn them in and get the deal. I would wait till after I didn't get the deal. That's a great one. Variable rate commission. You guys need to know that.
I was unaware that we had to let people know that.
Yeah, you not only let people know that, Charles, you have to let them know by how much.
Okay.
Cool. What else, guys? Anything else? I'm just having fun here. So I got a 3 o'clock, but I got time.
Well, that's great, Mike, because I caught a cold during this time. Thanks.
I'm sorry about that.
Lee's got his hand up. Is there a reason why Lee has his
Lee.
hand up?
I already asked my question.
Well, then take your damn hand down.
Well, yes, ma'am.
Renee,
Hey, I think you need a little. I think you
tough.
need a little refresher cup to calm the nerves.
She's a little
there.
tough. That's all right. That's all right.
Diplomacy
Anything else,
101. You know, I
Speak the
love you,
truth,
Lee.
Girl.
I know you-
Are you seeing the market kind of still be heated, or is it calming down a little bit?
I held an open house in Willits of all places. And I had 20 people through this last weekend. And for Willits, that had to be some kind of a record.
I would think so.
I had an open house 2 weekends ago, Mike, and had somewhere between 52 to 70 adults in there.
Wow.
One afternoon.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, it still a lot of demand.
Mike, what about your listing on the corner over there in by,
Aquino,
yeah, by East Ridge? How-
14 offers listed at 915.
Hmm.
We wound up getting 1.1.
Wow, that's a good price for that.
We had
Wow.
1.125. Funny story, guys. This is an experience that I had a 1.125, and the first thing was I put the offer limit at 5 p.m. I was back east at the time, so it was 8 o'clock, and got these offers. And one guy gave me an offer. It was like 3 hours after the deadline, which I couldn't get a hold of my seller anyway. So, and it was the highest offer, 1.125. And I contacted the lender, and I didn't get the warm and fuzzies, but I went ahead and got the counters. I talked to the seller the next day, got the counter offer to them, and I just, you know, when you feel like this is not the right thing, I picked the wrong horse, because I also did the next highest offer at 1.1, and everything was great. The agent was professional, and I said that this morning at the marketing meeting. I didn't get the warm and fuzzies from the lender, and I didn't get the warm and fuzzies from the agent. So 3 hours go by, and this counter's still out there. I called my seller. I said, look, I said, I don't know if these guys are going to perform or not. I don't, you know, even though there's no contingencies, I just don't like this guy. And they were okay taking number 2 instead. So I did a withdrawal of the counter offer, because after 3 hours, I didn't have the counter offer signed. No communication. And I did the withdrawal of offer. I did an email. I tried doing a voicemail, but the voicemail box was full. Another red flag. And we ripped up the counter offer. Well, I did those 3 things: sent the withdrawal of offer, called him, texted him, and emailed him, and we took the 1.1 million.
Is there
And
a form for the withdrawal of offer?
Withdrawal of offer, which is a
Is there-
withdrawal of offer, withdrawal of counter offer. So, because that counter offer was still valid until I did the withdrawal of offer. And the response from the agent was, that's too bad. My buyers missed a great opportunity. What kind of response is that? If someone did that to me, I'd be ticked saying, hey, I got it all here, I'm ready to go. But that was the response. So I think that the buyer had buyer's remorse. So we took 25,000 less, still a good price, seller was satisfied. And the lesson that I want to convey is, make sure when you have a listing that you contact the lender, and make sure that although that letter says everything is perfect, you might get a different response when you're talking live to that lender.
I've had just the kind of same experience. I didn't look as closely as I could have at the lender on an offer we accepted. And again, it was the only offer, but still. And of course, the lenders ended up being a nightmare. And
Yeah.
if I, in retrospect, I knew who the lender was and knew that they weren't.
Well, you know, it's just, you know, I make fun of myself when I do the gut feeling, but you know, sometimes that you got to go with that, and know what things are. But anyway, sorry, Yvonne, that was a long-winded response, but
No, good.
I
Good
wanted to
example.
show you guys that, you know, just because a counter offer is out there, you don't have to wait till it expires. Same thing with when you're making an offer, you could do a withdrawal of offer, and that's the form that you use.
Good story.
Art's
Okay.
got his hand up.
So, Mike, I have a question. If
Yeah.
if you as a listing agent, you received an offer, and then and you countered that offer, but the buyer agent never responded. And I mean, are they legal obligation to respond within the timeline?
Don't have to.
They don't have
I
to.
mean,
Okay.
I mean, Art, I know where you sell, so some of those agents in some of those areas are kind of a little loose cannons, but they're not obligated to respond.
Okay. Okay.
You would think that they should, at least, hey, I got it. I got the counter offer and at least receipt of it. And I would call them to say, hey, I wanted to make sure that you received our counter to the counter or counter offer.
Okay.
And make sure that it's really not a technology issue, but they're just, not responding for the wrong reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right, guys. I appreciate it. Feel free if you have any questions. You guys know my number and my email address. I try to get back to you right away.
Thank
And
you.
if anything comes up,
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
please don't try to do this alone. You know what? It's successes are built on more than just one person doing it. I don't mind helping you out and giving you my advice. It may not be the best advice, but it's genuine for me. And I'll give you my take on how I look at things. And then you could do what you want to do. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Very nice. Okay, cool.